If you're planning a trade show or live event in 2025, listen up. Geopolitical instability is already reshaping how sourcing, travel, and event logistics operate. New tariffs, counter tariffs, visa restrictions, and supply chain disruptions are all in motion. And if you don't have a contingency plan, your event could face major disruptions, or worse, cancellation. No matter what your politics are, we are in a place of change. And with change always comes opportunity. That's the whole reason that I wanted to really have this video here late night. What I'm about to say is imperative, but it is not doom and gloom. With enough information, you can come out ahead in a wave of change that we're seeing right now. And right now, global events are shifting under our feet. Geopolitical tensions, economic swings, and new policies are reshaping how we plan and run events. This is an emergency notification for every association and trade show organizer and all of their suppliers. The landscape of live events in 2025 is changing fast. You need to adapt to ride this wave rather than being swept away by it, okay? So what are the exact threats that you need to prepare for and the specific steps that you have to take to keep your event from being derailed? Let's go into a few of these. How will new tariffs impact event budgets and vendor sourcing? How are visa restrictions and travel policies about to block international attendees from your show? What's happening with supply chain disruptions and how can you protect your shipments from delays? With financial instability and currency swings, how do you safeguard your event's budget? And how do you create a contingency plan that takes all of this together and ensures your event remains resilient in a rapidly shifting world? I don't usually talk about breaking news, but there's so much unfolding now, and the people that are talking about this are not talking about it from a place of solutions. So I have to jump in. I had to break the norm, and you need to too. These aren't hypotheticals that I'm talking about here. These are active challenges rolling out right now. And if you don't start adapting today, you'll be playing catch up. And when these changes hit full force, it may be too late. First, I want to share the latest data on geopolitical risks as of March 2025, the here and now. I'll share sources for all of this data in the comments. 2025 has brought in a bunch of geopolitical risks that directly and indirectly impact the events industry. We are witnessing a world that has moved from decades of globalization to an era defined by rivalry and uncertainty. Intensified trade wars are looming over our heads. Business leaders now believe that escalating tariff battles are the single most significant conflict-related risk to enterprises in 2025. In a study that SHRM put out said that 29% of CEOs rank decoupling from China as a top geopolitical risk to their operations. This reflects a trend of major economies reassessing partnerships and supply chains amid, rising US-China tensions. Global conflicts are fueling the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and new flashpoints like an expanded Middle East conflict have not only humanitarian consequences, but business ones, driving up energy and food prices and feeding inflation. The World Economic Forum's latest global risks report notes that state-based armed conflicts are now seen as the biggest immediate threat of 2025, identified by nearly 25% of survey experts. Conflicts such as this disrupt global operations in unexpected ways. We've seen them suddenly alter travel advisories and trade routes vital for international events. Rising nationalism and protectionism are currently fracturing the global marketplace. A recent survey of economists found that 94% expect greater fragmentation of goods traded in the next 3 years. And in practice, this means more tariffs, export controls, and localized regulations that complicate how we source event materials and where we host international events. Higher trade barriers and economic nationalism can lead to surging costs, and the cost of global business operations hit a 10-year peak recently. And executives worldwide are citing geopolitical instability as one of the top threats to their growth. Compounding these issues are energy and supply chain pressures. Conflicts in energy-rich regions from Eastern Europe to the Middle East are raising the specter of fuel shortages and price spikes. CEOs worldwide naming higher energy prices as the top economy-related geopolitical risk right now. And after the pandemic exposed weaknesses in global supply lines, companies are not sitting by, and neither should you. More than 78% of CEOs say that they plan to revamp or diversify their supply chains in the next 3 to 5 years to reduce risk. About 1 in 4 CEOs specifically plan to diversify their vendors to avoid being too dependent on any single country or supplier. All of this underscores a critical point. Geopolitical risks aren't abstract. They have concrete commercial repercussions, from sanctions and self-sanctioning to trade wars and sourcing upheavals. All of this underscores a critical point. Geopolitical risks aren't abstract. They have concrete commercial repercussions, from sanctions and self-sanctioning, trade wars and sourcing upheavals. Just today, March 4th, China, Canada, and Mexico have issued counter tariffs against the US tariffs. For trade show organizers, these translate into new variables that we have to account for when planning events in 2025. To sum this all up, the geopolitical environment for the first 6 months of 2025 will be defined by tension between major powers, war-induced shock, and a retreat from the global trade policies that we've all become used to. These factors raise costs and uncertainty for any organization planning large events or international gatherings until stabilization is made or fragmentation is diminished in those industries. All right, now let's get into it. The first area of focus: trade conflicts and tariffs are raising costs and delaying vendors. The problem here: the US has imposed new tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, all raising costs by 10 to 25% on key trade show materials like electronics, exhibit structures, and printed signage. And if you rely on international vendors, expect shipment delays and increased costs as retaliatory tariffs from other countries further disrupt the supply chain that you've become used to. These policies affect all businesses, not just event professionals. Like suppliers, sponsors, and exhibitors will all feel the ripple effect. So what should your action plan be to adapt to tariff changes, Budget for tariffs now. Review vendor contracts and build a 10 to 15% contingency fund for sudden cost hikes. Carve that out. Don't use your full budget onto that, and assign that for just the unknown. Secure alternate sourcing. Identify domestic or tariff-exempt suppliers for booths, staging, and giveaways, and diversify your vendors so that you're not reliant on a single country to be able to supply that. And work with customs experts. Trade policies can shift overnight. Stay in contact with foreign forwarders and ensure you have a contingency shipping plan. The second area of focus: visa and travel restrictions are impacting international attendance. What's the problem here? Visa wait times remain high, with some applications waiting up to 800 days for US visa interviews. New travel requirements, including the UK ETA and upcoming European ETIAS, add paperwork and wait times and potential denial risk for international attendees. And if you rely on global participation, these barriers could directly shrink attendance and your exhibitor presence. What should your action plan be to ensure attendee participation? Start visa applications now and encourage attendees, speakers, and exhibitors to apply at least 6 to 12 months ahead, please. Offer invitational letters to them as well to help with approvals. Monitor policy changes. Assign someone to track visa and travel policy updates, maybe on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly basis, and proactively notify affected attendees. Build virtual and hybrid contingencies. If key international participants can't get into the country, have a backup plan for virtual presentations and online networking so that they can still engage, and create valuable experiences. The third area of focus: supply chain disruptions are threatening exhibit and venue logistics. So what's the problem here? Shipping lanes and supply chains remain volatile, with recent disruptions causing major delays in Red Sea shipping, North American rail networks, and key manufacturing hubs. Port congestion is returning, and key event materials, such as AV equipment, custom displays, and even promotional materials, they're all facing larger lead times and price increases. A single delayed shipment can mean empty exhibit booths or last-minute cancellations. So what should be your action plan to mitigate supply chain risks? Order materials earlier. If your lead time was 2 months, scrap that. Extend it to 4 or 6 months and lean heavily into brokerage services that can facilitate deliveries earlier than your GSC can facilitate for their advanced warehouse receiving, for those high priority sponsored materials, the things that make or break your event. Source locally whenever possible. Reduce reliance on global shipping, and if you can rent exhibit materials locally, do it. Establish backup vendors. Always have a secondary supplier lined up in case your primary vendor can't deliver on time. This isn't going to work for every single thing, but for those that you can, do. The fourth area of focus, currency fluctuations and economic instabilities are inflating budgets. So what's the problem here? The US dollar remains strong, making US-based events more expensive for international attendees and reducing participation from weaker currency markets. Economic instability in several global regions, it's all causing exhibitor dropouts and unpredictable sponsorship revenue. So what should be your action plan to enable financial protection? Lock in pricing early. Negotiate fixed currency rates with vendors and international exhibitors to protect against cost swings. Offer tiered pricing for international attendees whenever possible. Adjust registration prices to remain accessible for international participants and be conscious of the efforts that they're having to go through to be at your event. Monitor global markets weekly, daily, monthly, something. Assign someone to track exchange rates and their trends and adjust financial plans before they impact your event's budget. The fifth, and probably the most important area of focus, how to build a contingency plan and protect your event from everything that we've just talked about here. Most trade shows don't have a real contingency plan, not for these geopolitical disruptions that we're talking about. And it leaves them vulnerable to the last minute problems that pop up. And without a structured plan, your vendors, exhibitors, and attendees will lose confidence in your ability to be able to deliver a seamless event. All right, now write this down and take these steps immediately. Like right now. Now, create a crisis response team immediately after watching this. Assign a team member to monitor global risks and update policies at least every 30 days. Secure backup suppliers and freight. Build redundancy in your sourcing and logistics so that one vendor failure doesn't derail the entire event. Establish a financial safety net. Set aside at least, 10, 15% of your event budget for last minute pivots. And for the love, make sure your insurance covers political risk. Please educate exhibitors and attendees. Proactively communicate upcoming restrictions so that they can adjust logistics, apply for visas early, and plan alternative participation if needed. The industry cannot afford to wait and react. We have to act right now. Work with your associations, engage your suppliers, and start future-proofing your event planning. Now, I want to take a moment and plug the Exhibitions and Conferences Alliance's Legislative Action Day that's taking place this year on May 29th. There are 5 key focus areas for 2025 legislation aligned so perfectly with what business events need as an industry, and I would highly suggest you join me in DC for ensuring that the business events industry's voice continues to be heard. And the travel and events industry has a voice. We saw it in action when industry coalitions pushed for the reopening of borders and clearer travel guidelines during COVID. Use that influence now to advocate for policies that keep events accessible, whether it's asking governments to expedite business travel visas or seeking clarity on travel rules so that companies feel confident sending employees to events. Advocacy aside, if you don't have a contingency plan right now, you need one. Like yesterday. Do not wait until these disruptions hit full force. Start preparing today so that you're ahead of any crisis to come, not caught in it. The ability to be proactive will set your event or your company ahead in the market. We saw the game board get flipped and rebuilt during COVID. Limber organizations saw the opportunities that less agile companies were failing at, and they grew aggressively, so aggressively. Change is only scary if you don't have the ability to adapt. So stay informed and stay agile, my friends. Thanks so much. Bye now.